why your thoughts aren't actually yours, and what that means for your free will. What's up guys, it's Drew here. Welcome to part 2 of Spinoza's Ethics Explained. Before we get into it, don't forget to like the video so others can see it and subscribe so you don't miss any in the future. If you like these types of videos and you want me to get the next part out faster, then feel free to donate to my Patreon here on the screen or down in the description. Each video takes me about 30 hours to make, so every single dollar is appreciated. In the last video, I talked about how philosopher Baruch de Spinoza thinks that everything in the universe is a part of one substance that he calls God. However, the term God can be replaced with cosmos, universe, nature, or any other like term without losing its meaning. In this video, I'm going to be using the term God in this way. It's not a personal God like that of the Judeo-Christian religions, where he's free to act, say, or do however he pleases. Instead, he's the creator and the creation itself. Effectively, God would be the first cause, the cause of all things. If you want a better explanation of all this, then check out part 1 here. But I'll make sure that you have the basics in order, so if you're just tuning in for part 2, don't worry, you'll still know what's going on. So we then split up the substance called God into an infinite number of attributes, of which humans are capable of experiencing 2, thought and extension. Extension are the things that are filling up 3D space, such as bodies, while thought is exactly what it sounds like, thinking. In the previous video, I used this image to help you picture how all this language fits together. This is God, or the universe, or substance, or cosmos, or whatever you choose to call it. This is the attribute of extension, and this is the attribute of thought. Everything that exists simultaneously through both the attributes as finite modes, found here. This copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is one of many titles that should have stayed as just a book, this stack of Monopoly money, this antique rotary phone, and everything else you can think of are all finite modes of the one substance that Spinoza calls God. Physical bodies, such as yours, are determined through the attribute of extension. Likewise, God is the activity of thinking, meaning your ideas are not separate from him, but instead remain as a part of him. Here's another way to picture it. Finite modes are like waves on the ocean. They're only the surface features, but are affected by the whole of the ocean beneath it. The ocean being the chain of causality that stretches all the way down to the ocean floor, or the first cause, God. On the surface of the ocean, in the attribute of extension, we would find this first generation iPod. You know, from before Apple became a world power, with a net worth greater than whole countries. Before the iPod, there's the infinite chain of physical things that have moved previously, allowing the iPod to be here, such as it being transported, its assembly, the mining of its pieces, and on to infinity. Likewise, for the attribute of thinking, here on the surface, we see the thought of pure and utter sadness, that the glory days of Apple ended with the passing of our Lord and Savior, Steve Jobs. May he rest in peace. Since Spinoza says that the two substances don't interact with one another, this thought is not caused by the actual death of Steve, but instead follows from other, previous thoughts. This brings us to Spinoza's idea of parallelism. If your body and your mind are completely separate, meaning they can't interact with one another, why is it that when you spill your coffee all over your new pair of Gucci-printed silk twill pants, instead of thinking, "Ah, what a great day it is to be alive," as the coffee seeps into each thread of the fabric, instead you think, "Jesus Christ, not my $2,000 pair of pants. Why? Why in God's name did I buy a $2,000 pair of pants?" How do the attributes of thinking and extension interact? Effects follow from causes. If I hit a pool ball, I cause it to roll and hit other balls, causing them to roll, and so on. In a parallel stream, ideas of the effects follow from ideas of the causes. The separate causal streams of thought and extension unfold in the same order because knowledge of the effect is caused by knowledge of the cause, not by the cause itself. Again, just as an effect exists through the cause, the idea of an effect exists through the idea of the cause. At any given moment, everything exists as one finite mode that is expressed through different attributes. They don't interact with each other, but will run in a parallel stream for infinity, always directly coinciding with one another. How about we take this a little bit further and talk about exactly what that means for the human mind? and specifically your day-to-day life. To Spinoza, a mind is nothing more than an idea, God's idea. Your mind is God's active conceiving of some finite thing. That finite thing that your mind is bound up with, conceiving from the moment that you're born until the moment you die, is your body. Again, the idea that is your mind corresponds to an object. That object is your body. Your mind and your body are one individual thing, expressed through both attributes of extension and thinking. There is no interaction between the two, but they always perfectly correspond with one another. So, your thoughts aren't yours, they're God's. You are just partaking in God's activity of thinking, because remember, you, me, this coaster, thermostat, and everything else are all a part of God. Not just humans have minds. It's not just you or I that have minds. As I said earlier, everything in the attribute of extension also has an idea in the attribute of thinking. So all extended beings must have minds. This means that every mode of the attribute of extension has a corresponding idea, which is referred to as a mind. This includes animals, rocks, cars, etc., giving God an idea of everything in the infinite intellect. But I'm assuming you're quite a bit smarter than a rock. So what sets your mind apart from theirs? What sets you apart from a rock is that you have more qualitative features than other modes, and are therefore able to do more. A body that is more active and able corresponds to a mind more active and able. It might help to think of everything as animate, or able to move, just in different degrees. Trees move slowly, and thus they can't think very deeply. Rocks move even slower, and can think even less than trees. There are also surely things out there that think even less than a rock. Because our bodies are composed of so many intricate parts, all communicating motion with one another, we are able to do more with our bodies and our minds. Bodies more capable make minds more capable. That's why the rock doesn't have a very capable mind, because its body is simple and isn't capable of much either. It could be said that a conscious mind, such as yours or mine, is the highest form of knowledge. And taking everything that we've said previously into consideration, we could say that consciousness isn't I think, like Descartes once said, but instead I can. This is because being conscious of oneself increases with our bodily capabilities. Why you don't have free will. The duration of your body isn't determined by the choices you think you make, nor the decisions you think you make. Instead, it's determined by an infinite ladder of causes, and due to this, Spinoza says that we do not have free will. Why is it that you feel like you have free will then? Because you are ignorant of the causes by which the actions were determined. If you understood all the causes at any given moment, you could always know exactly what is going to happen. Just as a stone thinks itself to be free rolling down a hill, you think you are free. This is only because neither one of you fully understands the causes of things, so you incorrectly assume it was your will. The mind can only hold so many things at the same time. Have you ever tried to play with your Tamagotchi, solve a complicated calculus problem, and read Trump's tweets all at the same time? Exactly. When the number of things your mind can hold at once is exceeded, they begin to blur with one another. Our minds aren't capable of comprehending all the causes at once. There's just too much going on. But if they were, we would know that we don't have free will. So why do you think the things that you do? When your mind is affected by some external thing, it leaves a trace of the idea of that thing in your mind. This we call an image. Through images, your experiences remain present to your mind, even after they've happened. Remember that time in middle school that you were roller skating, and it was girls only skate, but you were the only guy that didn't notice, ending up the only guy in a sea of roller skating girls. Then, the guy on the mic had to announce that was the case 3 times before you finally noticed. Can't you just still feel the embarrassment? Oh, no? That's just me? Okay. The human mind can contemplate external things by which the human body was once affected, as if they were present to the mind, even after happening. In other words, your experiences remain present to your mind even after they have happened. Everyone imagines and associates images in a way that reflects their own personal experience. If your body is at the same time affected by two different bodies, your mind will associate them when imagining it in the future. At one point in your life, your body was affected by the sight of an apple and the sound of the spoken word apple, which, taken apart from each other, hold no resemblance. But yet, because the body is simultaneously affected by the two, meaning is created. What comes to your mind when you think of the word apple? Maybe it's the sweet taste, the tree that it grows on, a worm you once found in your apple, or other types of fruit. Effectively, this also explains how the mind wanders between related things, bouncing from one related image to the next. Imagination is therefore anticipation of the future, drawing inferences based on how your experience has determined you to associate images. Or, in other words, imagination is rational knowledge that is partial, confused, and uncertain. Spinoza says that there are two ways of knowing: through imagination and through reasoning, sources of knowledge. We start by breaking down knowledge into two kinds: knowledge of the first kind and knowledge of the second kind. Knowledge of the first kind is from vague or random experiences. These are individual things that are perceived by your senses. As you go about your day-to-day life, you'll randomly pick up bits of information from all of your senses. This information is then used to create knowledge from opinion, or imagination, as you relate the information picked up by your senses. This is the most common way that you think, viewing things as happening by chance, and therefore creating the illusion of free will. Knowledge of the second kind, then, is reasoning. These are common notions and adequate ideas of properties. Extension is a common notion that can only be conceived fully because it is in all things. The more encounters your body has with other bodies, the clearer your idea of extension becomes. Although you aren't doing the exact calculations in your head as to when the ball you threw up in the air is going to fall back down, over time you've built up an accurate idea of when it is going to fall back into your hand, or not. So, to know rationally means to understand the causes of things, and that they're necessary, not contingent, meaning they're not subject to be any other way than the way they are. Spinoza says that everything that has and will happen is necessarily determined. You might be thinking, how about quantum mechanics then? This is seemingly random, and could throw a wrench in Spinoza's argument. One might refute this by saying that we just think that quantum mechanics are random right now, but in the future we might better understand the principles, and it will cease to be random. Albert Einstein had a very hard time accepting quantum mechanics due to its randomness, because he was so deeply ingrained in thinking that everything can be understood through its causes. Now, knowing all of this, how do we avoid confusion? Spinoza says basically we need to properly distinguish between images, words, and ideas to avoid confusion in our lives. Alright guys, that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching the video, and don't forget to like so others can see the video, and subscribe so you don't miss part 3 coming out soon. In part 3, we'll be talking about what Spinoza calls the effects, such as the sources of joy, sorrow, love, and hatred, and see how understanding everything as necessarily interrelated will diminish emotions of hatred and envy, preparing you to seek your own interests in a harmonious way. If you enjoyed the video and think it's worth even $1, then check out my Patreon link on the screen and down below in the description. Keep on thinking deep and living well. I'll see you guys next time.